to help us prepare for eternity where we have access to the tree of life and that water of life, we come to the word of life. We find the word that Jesus has given us through the gospel, and even in the Old Testament we find things that are written for our learning. And tonight I want us to pay attention to a proverb, Proverbs the 10th chapter. We'll notice that in verse 23 it is as sport to a fool to do wickedness. And he compares that, so is wisdom to a man of understanding. It is a joyous thing. It is a sport in a sense of bringing joy, where one who has understanding, he wants wisdom. They go together. I will have more wisdom, I'll have better understanding. But when you look at a fool, he looks at what the sport is just to do wickedness. That's why I've entitled the lesson, Sin is a Sport to the Fool. And I believe we live in a society that is very foolish. You think about drunkenness. How many jokes are circulated around our communities and in our culture at work? He got drunk last Friday night, or last Saturday night. Oh, he was a character. And it's almost like we're passing over it. Anybody said that is a sin, it'll send your soul to hell? Galatians 5 says it will. One of the works of the flesh is drunkenness, Galatians 5:21. You cannot go to heaven that way. Is that serious? No, it's a sport. In fact, we will be like what Proverbs warns in chapter 23, that we put ourselves in danger, and when the effects of the alcohol is worn off, we'll seek it again. We'll go get drunk the next weekend. Put ourselves in danger again. It's just fun and games. And does anyone ever think that's a sin? Fornication and adultery. Can you imagine if you wanted to have an affair, you'd put it on a website where everybody is saying, we're having affairs, this is where you go to keep it private? And now they've had hackers, and who knows about their wife or their husband having affairs. But it's just a joke. It's a website. Everybody does it. Therefore, we can just have fun, and this will be our little group. We'll keep it quiet. How do you know that the people who run the website, what they're going to let out? Who cares? It's not that big a deal. It's sport to do wickedness. And yet, Galatians 5 speaks about fornication, adultery. You can't inherit the kingdom of God in doing that either. Homosexuality. It is all around us, flaunted. It's in sitcoms where people laugh at the male who is acting effeminate. They'll get a laugh. And people look upon that as that way, and you say, well, I think I'll go and I will see how people are remodeling their houses. I will go to that Home Network or DIY, and I'll just see how they're flipping houses and who they're making houses for and changing them. It's going to be two homosexuals or two lesbians a lot. Because we care about them, don't we? But you'll see the people interacting with them. It's like it's a joke. We know who they are. And here they are, and look how they interact with one another. But what is interesting to me is what I see is that when you have two lesbians, one of them always looks masculine. Why is that? I thought feminism and two women, we can't stand the man. I'm not drawn to a man. How come one of them looks like a man all the time? And how come two homosexual males look like both of them are feminine? Why is that? It's not about I was born this way, I'm attracted this way. We have been masculizing the feminine woman, and we have been feminizing the masculine man, because that's the way we want it. And it is sport to flaunt homosexuality in the face of God. There is no fear of God. It's funny. What about lying? Oh, you're a good politician if you get by with it. Teflon this, Teflon that. You'll never get caught. They'll never do anything about it. In the business world, if you can keep that person on the hook, just keep lying to them. Well, we're going to look into that. We're going to send that check in about the next few days. We're going to be doing all these things. And all they're doing is lying because it's sport. That's how you deal with the corporate world. You keep them hanging. You float their money. Lying. All liars will have their part in the lake that burneth with fire and brimstone. Revelation 21:8. Homosexuality, who that practice these things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Sin is serious. It's no joke. And I think it's good for this lesson to be preached for people who are living in sin and may have gotten real, it's just all fun and games, and it's not real serious to you. I think they need to understand what the Bible says that makes it serious. But we as members of God's family who love God and worship God, we are God's people. We're saints in the kingdom of God. I don't want us to become desensitized and thinking, well, it's just been going along, this is the way it is, and we get where it's almost funny and it's a sport. I don't want us to be in that group. And so tonight, basic fundamental principles. Now I have 5 of them to offer you, and then a conclusion of why sin is no joke. And some of it is the way we can look at our physical world once sin entered into the world. Sometimes we don't think about the physical aspect of sin. We think about the spiritual part, but the consequences that followed when sin entered into the world with Adam and Eve. In Genesis, the 3rd chapter, verses 17 and 18, we'll find that the ground was cursed. Why would God do that? It's man that sinned. Ground didn't do anything. And he kept him, verse 22 and 24, kept him having access to the tree of life. He did not die physically immediately when they both took the fruit. They lived to have children. But not having access to the tree of life, they would die. And there was physical death, the consequence of sin entering into the world. Isn't that serious to you in the world? Even if you don't, you just look around you. And the ground is cursed. You're going to have to be involved. Thorns and thistles shall bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. And the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread. You're going to have to be keeping the garden weeded, keeping the ground fertile, and keep the weeds out of that. You're going to have to work those fields because the ground is cursed. Why? Because you ate the forbidden fruit. Sin entered into the world. And so how do we deal with it? Well, we mow our yard at 7 at night in the summertime. Too hot at 12. We'll have somebody kind of hold the garden if we're not doing it ourselves. We got to constantly mow our yard, and we have to constantly weed it. And crops on a longer scale, we have to rotate those crops. I just planted wonderful tomatoes one year. I think I'll do it for the next 3 years. No, you won't. It won't be very good. Got to rotate your crops. The ground is cursed, and it's because of sin. And God's communicating to us in our world of physical existence. When you look at the ground cursed and all the things that take place that bring you labor, you'll get a feeling of what sin is. It's no joke. What are we going to die of? We've been taken away from the access of the tree of life. And we don't live forever. We corrupt. But look at our world. We're fighting this disease. We're getting money to fight that disease. And that's fine. But something will get us. Who caused that? God did. In Romans the 8th chapter, in verse 20, God brought this into our physical existence to the point that it's something that we are subjected to against our will. Listen to Romans 8 and verse 20. For the creation was subjected to vanity, not of its own will. You're going to say, whose will is that? It must be the devil's will. Does the devil ever want you to hope? Not of its own will, but by reason of him who subjected it in hope. Satan never wants you to have hope. That's God. He subjected us to our earthly existence in vanity. We get over this disease, we'll have another one. We're going to die of something. But he says, by reason of him who subjected it in hope, that the creation itself shall also be delivered from the bondage of corruption unto the liberty of the glory of the children of God. And you'll find out what kind of corruption you talk about. Spiritual? No, it's physical. For you know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And not only so, but ourselves also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves. We get sick. We die. We have a disease. Waiting for our adoption, to wit, the redemption of our souls? No, the redemption of our body. And God says, take a look at disease. Take a look at the sorrows. Take a look at your life. You get one thing knocked out and something else will hit you. Because this life is the consequences that it wasn't our will that I get sick. It's not our will that this bad thing happens into my life. God, how come you allow us to experience that? I subjected it to you, not your will, but to do in hope that you'll be looking beyond this pale of tears to the redemption of your body. Until then, you're going to groan and you're going to be in travail. That's God's plan because of sin. Now, I thought about this because we got loved ones in this church that suffering from cancer. We pray for them. But if you looked at the commercials, that you are indiscriminate. You attack the young. You attack the old. You attack the weak. You attack the strong. But cancer, you're going to be history. M.D. Anderson. We can fight that battle, and it's true. But it's almost like cancer, you're the enemy. And I want us to see there's a higher level that allows us, cancer, diabetes, whatever our ailments are. It used to be TB. That was going to be something to get you. We'll conquer them. And I hope we find these particular remedies that we can live longer and have health. And that's fine. That we can pursue that. But I want you to know the bottom line is God allows us to experience something will get us. And he subjected us to this vanity of life so we could have hope of heaven, because that's how bad sin is. When I talk to someone who's seriously ill, and I talk to people of the world that have a disease and it's terminal, on one level, we're sorry because of that. I wish cancer is a horrible thing. People losing their memories, a horrible thing. Not even the same person. That's a horrible existence. That's true. But I, on another level, because of Romans 8, I said, I know why we experience it. And that helps me realize sin is no joke with God. Consider the physical consequences that has come into our existence because of that. Now, what about the spiritual? We're separated from God. A lot of people, that's no big deal, but it is. And you begin to realize, God, how serious is sin to you? Isaiah 59, 1 and 2, we'll find that it's not about God's inability to see us or hear us. His hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither is his ear heavy that it cannot hear. But your iniquities, this is how bad sin is, your iniquities have separated between you and your God who created you, who's blessed you with fruitful seasons, who continues to send the rain upon the just and the unjust. But you are separated spiritually from that awesome God. Your sins have hid his face from you that he will not hear. Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. In the same breath, the free gift of God is eternal life. But the wages of sin, I deserve separation from God because of my sin. That tells me how serious sin is with me. I'd hate to be separated from someone I love, where they won't pick up the telephone, read an email, read a letter, or come into my presence. To be separated from somebody I love that drastically, when I know they could pick up the phone, they could read a letter, they could talk to me. God has spoken in his word. He says, I will not hear, and my hand will not save while you are in that condition of sin. But thirdly, God wants us to know about his wrath. Oh, he's just a kind, loving grandfather sitting up there in the clouds, and he just looks down, just loves his creation. He's a loving God, not a wrathful God, is he? Well, why would he want us to know about his wrath? And notice how he says it in Romans 1 and verse 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven. Oh no, God, why would you want it to be revealed? What are you upset with? Against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hindered the truth in unrighteousness. His wrath is revealed right now from heaven. This is what he thinks of sin, and he's not passive about it. He is not ambivalent about it. He's not saying, well, we do have it or not, it's not going to affect me any. I'm just a loving God. His wrath, this is his fury. He wants us to know that. Why? Because that's how serious sin. Sin is no joke, fool. And said, I revealed it. I want you to know. So he revealed in his word. But that wrath is coming. It's coming where we will feel it. In Romans, the 2nd chapter and verse 5, the goodness of God ought to lead to repentance, but apparently that's not going to work with some. So he says, but after thy hardness and impenitent heart, you treasures up for thyself wrath in the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of God, who will render to every man according to his works. Wages of sin is death. You're going to see what death feels like. To them that by patience and well-doing seek for glory and honor and incorruption, they're going to have eternal life. But unto them that are factious, I want it my way, God. All this sin is just a sport. And obey not the truth, but obey unrighteousness, shall be wrath. Shall be wrath. Wrath is revealed. It's what I think of your sin. But there shall be wrath and indignation. That's not just anger, that's fiery indignation. How's it going to feel? weight. Tribulation, the weight of that will cause me so much anguish if I'm in that state. Tribulation, anguish upon every soul of man that worketh evil. To the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Glory and honor and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Jew first, and also the Greek. Why? For there's no respect of persons with God. It's about sin. I don't care how rich or poor. I don't care what your family tree is and where you came from. I don't care what your skin color is. I want your heart. And if that heart is one that is going to be factious and I will not obey the truth, I tell you what, wickedness and sin will probably be a sport to you. But God said that's the fool. The wisdom is, I'm separated from a God, and he's not ambivalent at all. His wrath is revealed from heaven on sin, and one day I'm going to experience that. The fiery indignation of God. This last week, all the rainstorms, the lightning, I had a couple of electricians that were working up. I don't know what struck us, but we had things out. And it blew up things in the box. Having all that repaired. And they came out and it was raining and it started lightning and they're working with electricity. So they sat under the patio cover with me. They said, we didn't have electricity, so can't use my computer very long. So I'm writing things out the old way, the Bible there, and he said, what do you do for a living? I'm a preacher. They talked about that. And I said, y'all, do you go to church anywhere? I said, no, that's not for us. I said, you work with electricity all the time? And you don't know about God? And about that time, lightning struck. I think it struck our house again. But it struck around the corner. And these two guys were sitting there, and around the corner, I saw the brightest white light come out between the fence and our house. And their eyes got big. I said, and you don't believe in God? And they didn't talk about it anymore. It scared them. It scared me. They went home for the day. But it was a sense, you look at the sheer power, who brought all that to being? Who's above it all? It's God. And fiery indignation of his wrath will come because of sin. Fourthly, God wants us to know how sinful sin is. So he ties it in with the law. And what's interesting in Romans, you'll say, no one can be justified by the works of the law. Works of the law, no man be justified. But here in chapter 7, he'll tell you how good law is. Because he's driving home a point, and I want us to catch it. I would not have known sin unless the law said, thou shalt not sin, or shalt not covet, Paul says. And he says, but sin, finding occasion, wrought in me through the commandment all manner of coveting, because I knew what it is, for apart from the law, sin is dead. But he said, I was alive apart from the law once when he was in that, as a young boy, young baby, he was alive, but sin revived, and when the commandment came, sin revived and I died. He says, and the commandment which was unto life, the law is holy and righteous good. It was unto life. This is how you live to be right with God. This I found to be unto death. For sin, finding occasion through the commandment, beguiled me, and through it slew me. So that the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and righteous, and good. Did that which is good become death to me? Is that my problem, the law? He said, God forbid, but sin, that it might be shown to be sin, by working death to me through that which is good, that through the commandment sin might become exceeding sinful. What's his point? Sin, you're personified, and you take something that's good And the combination with you taking that law condemns me to death. How sinful you are to take something that good. And sin lies to us. It comes along and beguiles me and I die. He said, well, Satan does that. Well, sin is personified. Well, all of that taking place. Here is a law. This is how you brought with me. Don't covet and don't do all these things. But here I know those things and then I do it and I'm deceived. How is the first man and woman deceived? They had a commandment, don't eat the fruit of that tree that's in the midst of that garden. You'll not die, you'll not have this. He lies to you. Satan does that, but that's sin. And he took that which is good and it brings forth sin. Sex is good. Fornication, adultery is a corruption of that wonderful desire that God has given us to be satisfied in a certain way. And that's the way sin works. I want to tell you, God wants us to know how bad sin is, because it always takes that which is good and corrupts it and twists it and kills you with it. And finally, God's wrath is on sin. Fiery indignation of his wrath one day coming upon us in judgment is a reality. And God does not change that. And what it demanded to take away sin was the death of his Son. To me, that's the ultimate of showing that sin is no joke. God, we didn't first love you. But in 1 John the 4th chapter and verse 10, God loved us. Here is love, not that we love God, but they loved us and sent his Son to be what? The propitiation for our sins. That demands the understanding that there is wrath with God. And we already noted that. He's not ambivalent about it. And the only thing that could satisfy his wrath, which he's justified in having, took the death of his Son. Why? God is great. He can say, over, I forgive you. We don't need any death. But see, he's a holy God. And Romans 3 gives us a little indication what it's like to be a holy God. And you cannot just overlook sin. Romans 3 and verse 23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. He says, being justified freely by his grace. See, his grace, it's not what I did to deserve it. His grace, his love, that through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God set forth to be the propitiation. Through faith in his blood, I can have the wrath of God removed from my sin by believing and trusting in the efficacy of Jesus' shed blood. What is that all about? Why couldn't it be another lamb? Why couldn't it be, let's have a bloodless forgiveness so that the humanist in the world would not condemn us as Christians as being a bloody religion. God, can't you just do that? We'll get better along with people. No, because he wanted to show his righteousness. Because the passing over of sins done aforetime in the Old Testament law, when they offered the sacrifices, in the forbearance of God, for the showing, I say, of his righteousness at this present season, he's right. He says that he might himself be just and the justifier of him that hath faith in Jesus. God, a righteous, holy God, cannot just overlook sin and say, tick-a-lock, it never happened. You're okay. We don't have to kill anybody. He had to be just, but he wanted to be a justifier. So he had to kill Jesus. Him who knew no sin, he made to be sin on our behalf, that we might become the righteousness of God in him, Paul said to the Corinthians. That's what it demanded. You tell me sin is no big deal? From God's perspective, that's all I'm giving. I'm giving God's perspective. Through His Word, He's revealed from heaven, my wrath is upon sins of man and unrighteousness. Sin, you're so exceedingly sinful. You took that which is holy and righteous and good, and through it condemned me when I went against that law. How sinful you are. You indeed are no joke. And so we begin to realize the only thing that can take away our sins is the blood of Jesus Christ. And so, okay, He's the sacrifice. In just a few moments, I'm going to become a Christian. And I'm going to appeal to Christ and His sacrifice, and I'm going to be right with God. Hold on. You don't know how bad sin is to God. Because what He tells us in Proverbs 14 and verse 9, and I want to start there. And some of you may have a different reading here, and there's a lot of different reading, but the American Standard, I think, is accurate. A fool mocks sin. That's some version, the King James Version. A fool mocks sin. We should talk about the foolish. Just mock sin. We've seen that from Proverbs 10:23. But the American Standard says, a trespass offering mocketh fools. But among the upright there is goodwill. The upright is going to have the favor of God. But what mocketh fools? They're just going to offer a trespass offering. God, you want an offering? I'll give it to you. But they have not changed their heart about sin. And God says, I don't want your offering. Proverbs 21 and verse 27, the same point is set forth again. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. Abomination to whom? It's God. How much more when He bringeth it with a wicked mind? New American Standard says intention. I just cover my bases. If you were to walk down the aisle tonight and say, I don't want to live this way as far as sin and God being angry with me. Jesus, you're my sacrifice. But you never change your heart about being drunk or homosexuality or any of the things that contradict God's word. That sooner or later it'll become a sport again to you. Because you haven't changed your heart. And God says sin is this bad, and I'm going to deal with you from the inside out. Just offering a sacrifice. Jesus, you're my sacrifice. And you're not willing to die to sin? You're not broken yet. Don't come down the aisle with that. Because He said, such sacrifice is an abomination. Sin is that bad. But the heart that says, I'm really not broken about it. I just want acceptance. I want to be a Christian. Whatever that means. I follow Christ. But what happens? You continue to have this attitude about sin. The psalmist tells us, David, as he came to realize how horrible sin is that he committed with Bathsheba. He says in verse 16, for thou delightest not in sacrifice, else I would give it. He's making a comparison of what's more important. Sacrifices were essential. He said, I would give it, but you don't delight in that. Thou hast no pleasure in burnt offering, yet often he did have pleasure in burnt offering. This is his point. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit. A broken and contrite heart, O God, thou wilt not despise. So there is the intention. There is the mind regarding sin. There is the inside. God, I've been getting drunk on the weekends and we've been making jokes about that. What an affront to you, oh God. The fornication, adultery, notches in my belt, things to say to the people in the locker room, how we conquered this and conquered that, how I'm cheating on my wife, nobody knows it, don't you tell anybody, all those things. Homosexuality flaunted in the media world. We become a Christian, and that becomes laughing material. You realize this demanded the death of God's Son. God, I'm sorry, and I'm changing. I'm not bringing a trespass offering, because all that's doing is mocking me as a fool. It is an abomination to you, especially when I'm just kind of giving it to get by a little bit. Maybe with someone that loves me enough, well, I'll become a Christian, but I haven't changed my heart about sin. Sin is that bad. We've got to change our heart about it and repent. And I know one thing, you come forward tonight and you realize that the only thing that can take away my sin is Jesus' blood. And God, how horrible sin is to you that it demanded the death of a holy and righteous, only begotten Son. And you killed him for me. And I'm coming with a broken spirit, a contrite heart, oh God. Joke is over. I'm not a joker anymore. I'm coming in humble obedience to that gospel with that broken and contrite heart. And you know what? I know, God, you will not despise that. Just as I am. I'm not going to wait any longer. I just got one plea. Christ, save me from my sin. Fighting's without, fear's within. I'm coming. Because I believe in the salvation, the efficacy of your blood, but I'm coming with a heart that's totally determined to turn away from sin. And God, thank you for your sacrifice. And I humbly submit to your will. God will delight in you tonight, and you can be saved from your sins. As we sing this song, if you need to obey the gospel, I encourage you to do so as we stand and sing.